Right. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone from wherever you're joining us from. My name is Sam Nyamwange, and I'm the Community Support Manager at Crew for All. I am hosting this wisdom call at COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, which is very timely because we are talking to an a climate action focused organization today, but also we are going to speak about building a purposeful global youth movement. This is a very important topic because it's important to, have young people because they're the ones who have the energy, have young people at the center of different discussions, have young people at the center of movements that push for change and action within their communities. It's very interesting also that I am hosting this discussion this evening, maybe just 2 days after I hosted Celebrating Youth Action reception at COP27. And I could see very many young people very, charged with the spirit to, protect their communities from wherever they are from. They are able to realize the challenges that, the communities face and are able to rise to the action. So today we are going to be listening to 10 Billion Strong and Patrick Arnold specifically, to gain more insights from their very inspirational program. Now, before we start, I'd like to do some short housekeeping to ensure that we successfully run this session. You have been muted upon entry, and you have the chance to share experiences and questions. And when this chance comes, please feel free to unmute and speak. But in the interim, please feel free to use the chat facility for any communication purposes. You also have the option to share your video, but if you choose to do so, please ensure that you remain in a respectful environment. And also finally, as we have quite a diverse audience, I'm inviting you all to, start with introductions. Please share your name and your organization on the chat, and, what has brought you here and what do you look forward to learn on this wisdom call. Also, a short introduction to Crew for All. For a decade now, Crew for All has been dedicating its time to build a powerful, customizable platform that helps changemakers equip, train, and connect their communities with the aim of leveraging technology to make the world a more loving, just, and sustainable place. Just recently, Crew transitioned from Crew 2030 to Crew for All, gifting this platform to volunteer movement, accelerators, education programs, and so on for free. And we are continuing to expand our commitment to making this community technology accessible to all movements and nonprofits across the world. Thank you very much, Evelyn. I see you there. Please feel free to continue introducing yourself in the chat. Now let's get right into it. My guest is Patrick Arnold. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Oh, hi, Sam. I'm fantastic and really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for accepting the invitation. Could you please start by introducing yourself before you speak about what made you think about 10 Billion Strong?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. Thanks for having me, Sam and Aaron. On behalf of the crew team, I'm really grateful to be here. I'll get into why I'm so grateful in a moment, but yeah, I'm Patrick Arnold. I'm based in the United States in St. Louis, right in the middle of the country. Although I like to think of myself as a coastal person. I grew up in Massachusetts, near Boston, which is right on the ocean, the East Coast, and then I spent about 13 years living in California on the West Coast. I've worked all over the world. I've been really fortunate and privileged for my career in international education and leadership development to work all over the world. So I spent a lot of time working in all across Asia and a lot of different countries, and had an undergrad experience and some travel experience in sub-Saharan Africa. So those regions are near and dear to my heart. And when I think about a lot of the impact that I want to have in the world, a lot of it comes back to those two regions. But yeah, here in St. Louis, I've got two young kids. So I'll return back to that point in a moment. But I'm really excited to share what we've been doing. Especially, I see some familiar names in the group from the 10 Billion Strong community, from Uganda and South Africa and the DRC, and maybe a couple other places. So yeah, looking forward to our chat today. Sam, do you want me to
Right.
share a little bit more about 10 Billion Strong, or what makes the most sense?
Yes, please go ahead to tell us about the history and, why do you think about 10 billion strong?
Yeah, so this is a really, really timely chat, both with COP27 coming to a conclusion in the next few days, as well as just a few days ago, on Tuesday, the UN, United Nations, celebrated the day of 8 billion. So we're theoretically total the family is 8 billion people, which is sort of amazing. I was posting some stuff about it. About 220 years ago, we were 1 billion people. So in about 200 years, we've gone from 1 billion to 8 billion. In another couple decades, 3 or 4 decades, we'll probably at 10 billion before we'll decline as a population. So when I sort of zoom out to why I started this, I've got sort of a couple ideas that I was holding dear. So one is I was doing a lot of reading about environmental issues because I was running international exchange programs, and I was learning a lot about environmental issues all across Asia, in particular Hong Kong, China, and Indonesia. And I had been traveling to these places over a period of a decade, and I had seen environmental degradation happening very rapidly to these places that were once pristine. I could see economic growth was outpacing the capacity to handle some of the waste streams that were happening. And so really amazing and beautiful and pristine and important ecosystems were getting polluted. And so that was sort of like one very concrete observation that I had seen. And then I've been reading about sort of the macro picture of environmental issues and this population growth and resource demands that were happening. And I realized we're really hitting this convergence of a big number of stressors on our planet. And that ultimately has very big implications for the health and well-being of people. So I'm really focused on the planet, but most importantly, I'm focused on people. So 10 billion strong was created to think about a world around 2050 or 2060 in which we'll have 10 billion people on our planet, all wanting things, all consuming resources. But instead of thinking about population growth as negative, I really wanted to flip it and think about the opportunity we have to channel optimism and human ingenuity and creativity in designing better life and better systems for all of us. So thinking about who are the next generation of people who can say, sure, we have a lot of problems, but let's figure out how to be ambitious and be creative and solve them. And I think so much is happening right now. When we look at floods and hurricanes and cyclones and climate change and plastic pollution, there's so many reasons to be negative. But what I've seen over the last couple of years of doing this, there's so many reasons to be positive because there's so many amazing leaders. There's so many amazing innovations that are tackling these challenges. And that's really what we focus our effort on. And so the big picture is 10 billion people and climate change and plastic pollution. But our specific way of addressing it is investing in leaders, because leaders, people, are the only thing that can create change. And so that's what we're optimized to do at 10 billion strong.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Patrick. There's a lot of disruptive thinking there because there's certain ways that we are sort of programmed to think about stuff, that population growth is necessarily a bad thing, but you're rethinking that model. So I want to take it up from the last point that you raised and ask, why did you want to work with young leaders? Because I mean, you would have easily decided to go to the UN and try to protest to get already established world leaders, but you decided to work with young leaders. Why young people?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that. So one, and I said I'd come back to this point, is I have two young daughters, and part of this inspiration was when my first daughter was 3 and my second was about to be born, and I was trying to imagine life when they were my age. I was mid-30s at that point. I was thinking, all right, when they're in their mid-30s, what is life going to be like? And it was, in some ways looking a little grim. But going back to optimism, I wanted to design a set of programs that could be forward-looking, then really think about, if we want to get there, what's one of the best vehicles? Unfortunately, the patterns of the past got us into this current problem. And so in order to disrupt the systems, we might need to think very differently. And young people are the best at thinking differently because they have fewer expectations of the way the world works or should work, but more they think about what is ideal and how to get there. They're more open, just from a brain science perspective. Younger people tend to be a little bit more open because their brain is developing, and they're open to new experiences, and they can synthesize it. And so it's not to say that older people, and now that I've gone well beyond a youth, it's not to think that I can't change, but one, I think people are more open to new ways of thinking. And two, I believe so much that young people ought to be able to shape their future, that this is part about giving them their voice and giving them the opportunity. And so when we think about 10 billion strong, like, what do we actually do? Is we have a set of environmental leadership programs that range from sort of 3 different pillars. So the first is environmental literacy, like understanding what's going on. The second is leadership development. And then the third is civic engagement. And so really, by working with young people, we want to give them the toolkits to start taking action, and tell them that they don't need to wait until they're an adult to drive change, but that they can start doing it in small and in some ways significant ways as early as they want. That they don't need to wait for someone to tell them they are a leader, that they can self-nominate. And we've already seen some great work as a result.
Thank you. I was looking at your manifesto earlier, the 10 Billion Strong Culture Manifesto, and it talks a lot about collective action. Everyone as a leader, systems practice, strength through diversity, imagining the potential, and nothing for us without us. In thinking about that manifesto, and for however long 10 Billion Strong has been running, how do you think this organization engages with the issues that are both a global priority, but also a local priority for the young leaders that are being, empowered at the local level?
It's such an interesting question that we think a lot about with our key stakeholders. So if we take an issue like plastic pollution or climate change, if you sort of zoom out this big global issue, it can feel really challenging for one individual or one organization, even one community to make an impact. So what we try to do with our focus on collective action is create some strong connections between the local and the global, and realize that it's not a question of should we do things locally or globally. It's just that both need to happen. And there are different types of actors that are best suited for either or coordinating between the two. So really a specific example, we're working actually in Kenya right now. I'm working on a project proposal with some of the folks, Sam, that you met when we met up in Nairobi last March. Is we're working on a youth climate action proposal. And it's like, well, I think we asked ourselves the question is like, well, what role can youth play in climate action, right? It's like it's really hard to change giant economies like the United States or China. Like what can youth do in Kenya to impact climate change? Well, one of the things that we're working on is if we think about the coastline of East Africa in Kenya, typically home to these amazing mangrove forests, which are so important for a couple of reasons related to climate change. So one, mangroves are great for protecting against rising sea levels and enhanced tropical storms. And so they dig into the embankments and they hold the sand and the clay, and they provide a great ecosystem for young populations of various species. So that helps with climate resilience. And it also helps with climate mitigation, right? Mangroves are great sources or great carbon sucks. They sink and they store all the carbon that they absorb. And so what we're working on is a project for youth to get involved in mangrove restoration and education with community members about the importance of mangroves. So to protect them and to treat them with respect, and also to work with local policymakers to create frameworks for protecting the mangroves. So in that one example, we've connected the actions of youth, what can happen locally, and how it can have global implications, especially if it's done at scale beyond just like one community. And that's what we try to do with our programs is keep drawing those lines together so that people, when they take individual action or group action in their community, they know that it has some broader meaning across some of these issues that are most important. And then when we look at what we ought to do as a youth movement is we ought to be doing enough of these in enough places that when we summarize to ourselves and our stakeholders what we do, we want that to be at a scale that feels meaningful, because that is the thing that is inspiring to people to feel like it actually is working and it actually makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you for that very practical example. I particularly love it because it's a nature-based solution, and it's also a locally driven solution. But also, as you've connected it, it has global impact, but it also has youth action in it. So how tell us more about how this program is designed and how the youth are engaged within the program. How does that work, and how has that changed over time as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a couple elements of it, and one, going back to my extreme gratitude for you and Aaron and Talis and the rest of the crew team. So Crew, this is amazing platform that some of you, or maybe more than that on this call, are familiar with, is a way that we channeled our vision with actually aligning it with our strategy for achieving our vision. So what we did is we have this vision for 10 billion strong to train environmental leaders. So, right, so that's like step one. We want to train environmental leaders, and we have this theory of change. So our theory of change is that young people can become leaders who can create positive environmental action in the world. And then so if we step backward, we need a strategy to make that happen. And so a key part of our strategy is this environmental leadership curriculum. And so as I shared, the 3 pillars of environmental literacy, leadership development, and then civic engagement. And so, so we created that's step 2. We have our curriculum. And then we really needed a distribution strategy. It's like, when we talk about intentional youth movements, it's like we had a vision, we have a curriculum, now we need a community. And I started this really as a side project in 2019. And I'll just zoom out to share what our growth has been. So in 2019, we trained about 20 people in an environmental leadership accelerator, all from sub-Saharan Africa. And it was sort of PowerPoints and Zoom calls and things like that. In 2020, we maybe trained about 100 people and a couple different types of projects, but still pretty small. And then we started getting into multiple hundreds, and we started to think about like, how can we do that, right? Like, if we really want to make a difference, we need to be influencing hundreds of people, but maybe even thousands or tens of thousands, or maybe even more. And so we asked ourselves, like, what's the best way to do that? And so we've been using the Crew platform, and I'll share in a little bit, but we've been using that as one of our main vehicles for distribution, and especially during COVID. And so what we did is we put our curriculum online through the Crew platform, and that made it accessible to really anybody in the world with just a few criteria in mind. One was internet connectivity and kind of data, enough data to access our materials. Two, right now our content is just in English. And three, we're sort of basic understanding of some science and some movement building techniques. But we really opened it up to anybody in the world to go through our curriculum and learn together as part of a cohort. And what we've seen has really been extraordinary, because part of our vision is sharing resources across different geographic areas. And so we've seen a lot of sharing of tips and advice and challenges and highs and lows from all across our communities. And that's been really inspiring. And so what we try to do is connect people. And our curriculum is really based upon kind of three learning frameworks. And so one is inform, and then two is inspire, and then three is transform. And so we want to connect people through those three elements. And once they do, they really start to understand what's going on in their communities. Excuse me one moment. What's going on in their communities, how they can lead themselves and others, and then how they can use the levers of power to drive change. And so this has led us through to be able to train hundreds of people. I think we trained about 400 or 500 over the last year. And then in 2022, we're probably approaching training 5,000 people. And we're able to do that with a mix of online and offline programs. And then the second element that's been really great for our distribution strategy is a train the trainer model. And so we've been running these hybrid programs, but we've been meeting people, NGO leaders in different countries, and we share our curriculum and we share our strategy, and we support them if they're interested in using our curriculum in their communities. And that's been great, because we've had people in Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, Tanzania, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam, all start to run in-person trainings using our curriculum. And that's how we start to see the collective action happening. And I think the final thing that I'll mention on this thread is just for people as they think about launching youth movements, is it takes a couple of years to see the dividends of some of these things. It's kind of this like long, hard slog of like, do people care? And is this working? But we're just about to launch a number of different program elements on Crew with a lot of different groups in a few different countries. And now when we put out our calls for application, the numbers are much more significant than they were 1 year or 2 years ago. And it's because of this network effect that you start to see that only happens after a certain amount of time doing it. But it's been good to see it get actualized over time, and really start to see what is authentically a youth movement.
Well, first of all, congratulations. 25,000 is not a small number. And then I want to tie that, with a question that was asked on the chat when we were beginning by Chloe. How do you recruit? I know you've said that it takes a while to see the dividends, and definitely there's the network element. But how did you start to recruit? And you can speak more about how the network has then come in handy to build that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm a really big believer in the power of technology to connect us and inspire us and to create new solutions. And so when it comes to recruiting and growing our network, what I did is I actually used Twitter in the early stages, and I still use it now. But what I tried to do is I found the most interesting and innovative and impactful environmental leaders all across the world. And I started following them and kind of just like learning about what they did. And I found the people that I seemed like their organization goals and their personal values and their personal actions aligned with us as an institution. And then I started engaging with them to see if they might want to learn together, partner together, co-create together. And what we did is we came up with some really interesting shared program visions together. And I think what was really helpful is I looked for really dynamic leaders in communities. And so I was thinking to myself, like, all right, well, I'm this American based in the United States. Like, I don't really know what's going on with environmental issues in Uganda on the ground, or Kenya or Bangladesh. But what I do know, what I'm really good at, is assessing leadership capacity and leadership potential. So after finding those people and building relationships with them, we started to build some stuff together. And if I go back to our Green Leaders Academy, the way we designed it was not sort of like what I wanted, what I thought was best for students and young people. Is I assembled a group. I called them initially 10 billion strong ambassadors and community leaders. I had 20 people from 17 different countries, all had some interest in, one, environmental issues, two, working with youth, and then three, some sort of like innovative model for doing it. And I sort of brought them together for about a 6-month period to brainstorm and co-create what exactly they saw was essential in their communities. Again, it wasn't sort of like my vision for it. It was like I had like the shell of it, and they helped me fill in the blanks. But the idea was, not only did we end up with something that was, at least from their perspectives, really desirable and necessary in their communities, they also became the early champions of our vision going forward. And so to go back to like very specifically, how did this help us recruit? I then had 20 plus community connections that they could share. And because I had found people who are interesting and dynamic and really strongly connected to their community and impact focused, they had a lot of community trust within their areas. And because we had a strong relationship, they felt comfortable sharing our opportunity. And so we sort of understood that there's this network effect where I'm tapping into their networks, and because they're strong connectors, they were able to really build that momentum for us. And more or less, that's what we've tried to do, is we invest in dynamic leaders, we build strong relationships, and they act as our kind of extended influencers and champions. And it was really cool. I sent out an email on Sunday night to our alumni. People have gone through the Crew-based Green Leaders Academy, and I said, we need your help inspire the next generation of people to join it. And I got all these messages that said, long live the Green Leaders Academy. And yeah, sure, I'll share it on Facebook. And I could see our web analytics. People were like popping up from all over the world to explore the program. And that happens, I think, when you find the right partnerships and you connect with them authentically and with mutual respect and mutual support, because I do a lot to support our partners as well, for just helping to find funding or help with operations or whatever is useful. So have a strong shared relationship with partners is incredibly helpful and essential for recruitment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I have my next question. I have 2 more questions, and then I can allow you to showcase the platform. Because I'm very interested in, and I really love the concept of how the hybrid model is done. because I also get the chance to witness, an in-person workshop in Nairobi. How have you seen that working well? The uniqueness of the hybrid model as opposed to just having it online. Have you seen it transform the fellows that you've had, in both doing the online and the in-person workshop?
Yeah, so I think the way that we differentiate our programs, at least for now, is the online program is more or less our entry-level program. And so it gives a lot of people at the earlier stages of their environmental impact journey tools to start learning about the issues and make a difference. And note there, I didn't mention like early on in their lives or their careers, because we are getting people who are moving in one direction and then they're making a bit of a pivot and they're like, oh, I actually care a lot more about environmental issues rather than business or something else. Sometimes it's like the first thing that they're doing, but sometimes it's a little bit later. But anyway, it's their entry-level experience to start taking environmental action. And then our in-person trainings tend to be with more experienced people who are already leading movements in their own communities. But what tends to be one common thread between both groups, both the in-person and the online programs, is they're very interested in global connections with other movements and other leaders. And what we tend to see is if you're in Indonesia, for example, and you're working on a particular issue, it might feel hard to get inspiration. It might feel challenging because it feels like a grind or a slog, or the issues are always there. But when people take a step back, they and connect with others, they realize that there's a lot of shared solidarity for action around these things, and there's a lot of other resources and inspiration that they can find, and that's one of the things that we're able to do. And Sam, when we met up in Nairobi, we had a group of really 15 amazing leaders from across East Africa. Almost all of them were founders of their own organizations. And it felt like at one point kind of like a therapy session, because we're like, oh man, it's so hard to raise money, or oh, it's so hard to get enough momentum. Like there's all these challenges. And so what we try to do is build support structures. So people feel like they've got just like that little lift behind them, that they're not all alone in this, because these issues aren't going to be solved immediately. And so we all need to work collectively and support each other to get there. And so that's one way we see the hybrid, or the connection between the hybrid models is sort of like some things are best done online and some things are best done in person. And kind of just, we try to get the right audience for the right setting.
Brilliant. In thinking about the work that has been done so far, and then most of the work happening during a pandemic, have you seen that work actually create impact? And then could you share examples or stories of any fellows that you have top of mind that have, greatly gained or benefited from, being a part of 10 Billion Strong?
Yeah, it's something that we think a lot about in terms of our program model.
Yeah, it's now looking quite crowded.
What's our end goal?
And then there's this empty space here.
Oh, we've got.
Sorry.
So I'm just wondering.
All right, sorry.
That's all right. We've got some really ambitious environmental impact goals, and we reflect a lot as like, well, how does training people actually like make an environmental impact? Like, that's kind of like front and center for us to be aware of. And one thing that we know to be true is likely our impact is going to scale with time, right? Like we see, like I'll just draw like a kind of a graph here. Here's our x-axis, and here's our y-axis. In the short amount of time, we're not going to see a lot of environmental impact, but eventually it's going to increase as the young people we train have more influence in their careers. And so what we're focused on right now in our program design is what we call early mastery experiences. And so let me define that. So early mastery experiences are opportunities for young people to take an action, learn how it worked in practice, and feel good about it being successful. And so an example of that might be organizing a cleanup of your school community, or getting your school to segregate waste into plastic, paper, and organic waste, and getting a school to focus on that as a policy. If we zoom out, globally, that's not a lot of impact, but individually it's very powerful, because one, it's changing, there's some modest amount of impact in that school community, but it's showing a lot of people that things can change. And really importantly, it's showing that young leader that they can influence something. They can get a bunch of people together to change things for the better, and they get people in power to listen to them and to buy into that change. And so we see loads and loads of examples like that, where people are changing things in their schools, in their neighborhoods. They're doing a lot of beach cleanups and education. They're starting to plant trees and reforest areas. They're starting to educate community about the importance of forests. And so all of these, taken collectively, still relatively modest, but what we see is this kind of upward trend that we really hope where people are starting to take more impact, and that the scale of the impact will increase as they have more influence. And so that's, again, something to think about in youth movements is, what do we want to see now versus what do we want to see in 5 years or 10 years and 20 years? And because we're interested in like our impact when the world is at 10 billion people, we've got decades to see this play out. But what we're really trying to encourage people is to take effective action. And so the way that we really encourage that in our training is the last module that we have is called Launching Your Impact. And we have everybody reflect on an environmental problem in their community, and they write a project proposal to address it. And we sort of stop there for right now. We at least let them think through it as a mental exercise. And what we're going to start doing in the next year is allocating some grant funds to actually have people implement those projects and take that action and have those early mastery experiences. And that's really important and exciting for us, because that'll give us some good collective action data as well.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, because it sort of merges with even the discussions that have been happening at COP, that even at a global level, that we might not be able to make those very hard-hitting solutions, but everything that can be done should be done, even at the smallest level possible. And then it would be awesome to have another conversation after you have given out a few grants with some of the fellows who receive the grants, and actually see the kind of youth-led solutions that we see from the ground. I want to take this opportunity to also invite you to now share your screen and showcase how 10 billion strong looks like on Crew, for anyone who is on the call who would like to take part in the next cohort or something. I've seen a couple of questions asking how can people be a part of the next cohort. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, let me change that right now. And
as you do that, everyone on the participant list, if you have a question for Patrick, please feel free to put it on the chat, or please raise your hand and we'll give you a chance to speak immediately after he's done with the showcase.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to zoom into one specific thread that kind of goes on the conversation thing that we were just talking about. So this is module 11 in our tracks, and this is social innovation and transformative action. And so, right, if you look on the left column here, right, we have Inform, a couple of different curriculum pieces on inform, and then inspire, and then in transform. And that's our learning and engagement profile. But just because we were talking about it, we use this model here to think about our intended impact and getting people to think about the impact that they want to have in the world. And so there's a really great organization called Ashoka that focuses on social entrepreneurship. And they have this model of framework change, systems change, scaled direct service, and then direct service. And then they think about how individuals and organizations can create change kind of at these different levels. And this is something that's really interesting to think about for organizations. Like what level do they want to create change? And so Sam's in Egypt right now at COP, right? And people are really talking about framework change and systems change, right? Like what's the structure of economy? What's the structure of our energy mix? And so we focus on getting people to reflect on where they want to change. And if you think about direct service, it's like, kind of one-to-one, like serving people directly, and scale direct service is maybe what we're trying to do or maybe what Crew's trying to do, right? You're trying to serve a lot of people directly. Maybe Crew's trying to think about systems change, about how people in general just learn and get trained. But it's really it's good to intentionally think about that. But if we sort of zoom out beyond like what we're trying to do in this specific module, what we do is we have this whole curriculum. I'm just going to go back to what we have. So I shared earlier, we have 3 pillars: environmental literacy. So our environmental literacy modules are all here in the green. And then so we have a number of environmental issues. And these were the ones that were shared by our initial 20 ambassadors as being most relevant to a wide number of youth across the world. So we focus on the circular economy and climate change and plastic pollution and air pollution. We also, because we work with so many different countries, we try, if we have a country-specific program, to have modules on environmental issues that are specific to a particular country. So that's our environmental literacy focused curriculum. And I'll zoom into a couple of those modules in a moment. But then we also have in orange here is our leadership curriculum. And we have a specific leadership philosophy that I'll share. And then we have our civic engagement here in blue, where we think about civic engagement, like what is that? What does it mean to be civic engaged? We have some examples of environmental movements, and then we think about stakeholders and systems, and then people finish their course with a project proposal to launch their impact. So it's 15 total modules. It usually takes people about 2 months to go through the course if they're working a couple hours per week. So we usually do 1 to 2 modules per week. And I'll just give you kind of a tour of what a module looks like. So here's our program introduction. And we connect what we're doing to, actually, so we'll start at the top here. So we share people, we have some videos so that people can use Crew. We give them an insight into the goals of the program. We think it's really important for people to really understand like why they're here and what we're hoping to do. We have short-term goals and long-term goals and ultimate outcomes that we tie to the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development, the SDGs. And then we give people a sense of like, why do we exist as an organization? How do they connect to it? We try to give people a big sense of the why before they think about the who and the how. And then I'll just give you a sense. We really try to focus a lot on building community. And so we have people share about themselves, and because this is about nature and being outside, we want people to share pictures of themselves, like appreciating nature. So this is someone from our last program, our India Green Leaders Academy, someone sharing about her work and her interest in the ocean and her home community and Pondicherry. We have lots of folks from different countries. And so we get all these like interesting pictures of people from all over the world and interesting stories that people share. And it's really great when people start to interact and give a sense of what's important to them and then in their values. And, you know, for me as the program facilitator, these tend to be the most interesting things for me because it's, you know, it's, again, we're interested in protecting our planet, but it really comes down to the people and who they are and what inspires them and what they are excited about learning more about. So we try to make it as interactive as possible on the platform. And in our goals and our prompts, we ask people to, in each module, share one question and then answer at least two people's questions that they share. And that tends to increase engagement. And then I'll zoom out to another module that's been really interesting. And I guess I'll show circular economy because this tends to be something that's new for a lot of people. So what we do is we give some readings and some diagrams. We also have some videos, so people can click through the videos and watch videos about what is interesting to them and why these concepts are important. And what I really like about these is people can change their settings, right? They can do subtitles in different languages, you know, so they can do whatever language is relevant to their community. Maybe they learn more efficiently in Indonesian or Chinese or something like that. And so they can tackle it that way. But we want to make it as interactive as possible. So we have videos or really we want to make it as broad in terms of learning styles as possible. So we have videos, we have readings, and then we always have these kind of like outputs that people do. So that people share their reflection here, they type in their response, and then we can see what was interesting to people, what they learned from the content. Depending on the program, this tends to be, we get some really interesting responses and some interesting questions that people ask. And from our perspective, it gives us a really good idea of what people are taking away from these various different modules. So I'll pause there to see if there are any more specific questions. Just want to be mindful of what people are most interested in learning about.
Yeah, thank you very much for that overview. Such a well thought out platform, and you know that provides space for engagement, but also information, and also for people to really understand the different issues. I guess we only have room for one question, and there's one that has come through on the chat. But I guess this is more on a personal level. What do you think? How can we reduce the plastic waste in respect of the climate change revolution, and add a very interesting twist to that, and ask, at COP27, Coca-Cola was one of the major sponsors, and there was a big pushback by climate activists because these are one of the major polluters in respect to the climate. So what are your thoughts on that? Before you answer, there's someone who's raised her hand. Irene, could you unmute?
Thank you. 10 billion strong. My name is Irene, and I'm the co-founder for Women for Green Economy Movement Uganda. I've been following up what 10 billion strong does, and I've been part of some organization that you funded for the environment project and for the community. And then my question is, how are we, the trainees, that we were trained by one of the group that you trained? How are we going to benefit? Is there a room for us, or maybe to get also small grants so that we can also implement activities as the youth, as young girls, as young women in our communities? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Irene, for that question, and so glad you're here, and so glad you shared that connection. Maybe you can message which organization trained you, because we have 3 partners who ran those trainings in Uganda. Or yeah, maybe just share right here. Which organization trained you?
The organization is Youth for Green Communities, YGC. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, they do such great work, and I'm glad you were a part of that. So the big picture answer to that is 10 billion strong is evolving a little bit as our community grows and we learn more about what is most helpful for them. And so I think we will pursue 2 parallel strategies, maybe 3 parallel strategies. So one is to educate people directly on this platform. 2 is to continue to grow the network of trainers like Youth for Green Communities who trained you, and expand that in different countries. But 3, our third pillar of our strategy, I think is most important and most relevant to your question. We see ourselves now as having a really interesting opportunity to help organizations like yours secure funds to actually implement some of these projects. And so what we're spending some time on is getting to know our partners and our partners as well as possible, and looking at funding opportunities and trying to secure them. So we'll be able to offer a modest amount of funding for 2023 for sure, and we'll share when those opportunities come available to our whole network. But we're also trying to do this at a bigger scale, and it's a little bit more open-ended. And so I can't specifically answer like when we might have more funds, but it is part of our strategy going forward, because I think it's going to be really important, because that's where the meaningful work gets done. So stay posted for something very specific, a call to apply for grants, mini grants through 10 billion strong in 2023. Just make sure you're on our email list, and hopefully more macro, we'll have some bigger opportunities later on down the road.
Right. Thank you very much, Patrick, for that answer. We are now just 5 minutes to the end of the call. I want to spend the next 5 minutes to thank you, Patrick, for accepting our invite to be our guest on this call. Your insights have been really amazing. I'm sure some of the people who want to start purposeful global youth movements around any topic can learn a lot, or rather have learned a lot from your story and from what you do at 10 Billion Strong. It has been really amazing to have hosted you, to have very particular insights around, the engagement that is needed for young people to actually engage and then provide action in different topics. A big thank you to everyone who joined as well. Thank you everyone who joined. It's been amazing to have hosted you. We hope that you have learned something at this wisdom call when, we were celebrating, the work of 10 Billion Strong on Crew as well. This notes from this call will be available in another week or so. On the Crew for All website, we shall put together a blog that summarizes the whole call, and that shall be sent to each and every one of you. We shall also send the recording together with the call in case you have any friends, any relatives, colleagues who you feel might benefit from this discussion. Please feel free to share this with them. and we'll be grateful to have had you share that. Finally, you are invited, in case you have a global movement or a youthful movement, a volunteer movement, an accelerator, or anything, you're invited to build your community on Crew. It is very free, and you can build it within minutes with the new Crew for All feature. You can get that on our website, but we also have a grant currently running for organizations that are open, or rather that are working, sorry, that are working within climate action and within mental health. Finally, we shall be hosting the next Crew Wisdom, Shared Wisdom and Connection call on January 26th, and it will be about equipping new generation of social entrepreneurs. You are welcome to participate then, and we'll be sure to have you. We'll be sure to share this information and have you there. That brings me to the end of it. Patrick, you may give your parting shot and we'll close the room.
Sounds good. Well, I just shared in the chat our upcoming program. If you haven't joined this program before, although I know a number of you on the call have, and so feel free to apply if you're interested. And yeah, just wanted to thank Sam and Aaron again, and the Crew team for having us here, but also supporting our growth over the last few years. I mean it sincerely, that we couldn't have made as much impact, even close, without Crew. And so it's really been an inspiring and incredible network and platform to work with. And my closing thought would be, just keep looking towards the future and look for the amazing sparks and ideas that happen. There's a lot to celebrate, and there's a lot to get excited about. And together, all movements can do interesting and impactful things. And yeah, just keep going and be the leader that you want to be, because no one picks anyone to be a leader. So pick yourself and go forward and do great things.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, morning, or day, wherever you are, and have great holidays. We'll see you in January. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
I want to everybody see